as I say, thank you very much for attending this webinar, and intend to just take you through some of the key features of BuzzSumo and how you can use it for your influencer and outreach marketing. By influencers, I'm not talking just about the people with tens and tens of thousands of followers. Sometimes it's important that you reach out to relatively small audiences, or to sites that are particularly niche sites for your area. So we have a broad definition of influencer marketing. It's not just the people with the tens or even hundreds of thousands of followers in your particular area. So, okay. So you'll all, I'm sure, have some form of outreach process that you undertake as part of your influencer marketing, and it might look something like this, something along these lines. You might find content that's shared heavily. You might look for who creates that content, who's influential to the extent they get content shared a huge amount. You might even look at who's sharing the content, so who's amplifying that content, so who's helping make it go viral. You may be researching authors as well as sharers to find out just how authoritative they are. So you may be very interested in who's an authority in the particular space that I'm working in at the moment. You may do simple searches of influencers in a topic area, try and search on Google or other sites to find influencers. And once you have your influencers, you may try to filter them by relevant factors. So you may be after people with a high site authority. You may be after people with a lot of reach, so people have a large number of followers. You may be after people who actually just engage very well with their audiences, so you can get engaged with particular audiences. And once you've done your research, you've created and identified people, you'll add them to some form of outreach list, which may be in your CRM or other device platform that you're using. And you're then likely to reach out and build relationships with them in a number of ways. You might simply follow them, share their content, and over time you'll start to work with them to create content assets that you can then share, and they may start with you simply interviewing them for your site or getting top tips from them, but ultimately you're looking also to utilize their distribution routes, their contacts, to help you build links and to help you build social signals to the content assets that you're creating. So I'm sure your processes are slightly different, but the typical outreach process may look something along these lines. And I just want to run through how BuzzSumo can help you with this typical sort of outreach process. Sorry, this is a heavily text slide, but we'll move off the slides now. Just going to run through how you can find content that's heavily shared, how you can identify authors, how you can find people that share and amplify content, as well as finding authoritative sites, etc. And I'll take you through the influencer search and how you can follow and engage with influencers. But as I say, I really want to show you rather than sort of talk you through a set of slides. In these slides, I have set out 8 ways you can find influencers with BuzzSumo, but I'm going to go live and see if I can remember all 8 of those. I'm sure there are more, and you can be great to get your tips and add more, but I'm going to take you through 8 ways in which you could find influencers using BuzzSumo. So let's see how many I can remember when we jump into the live piece. So let's just bring up a live site. So I'll go full screen for you. Okay, so the first thing you might want to do is search for heavily shared content. So if I simply search for influencer marketing, as it's relevant for today, maybe I just want to look over the last month. You can filter by, time periods in BuzzSumo, as I'm sure that most of you know. So if I just want to see what's, say, trending over the last month, I can find the most shared content on influencer marketing over the last month. So the top one here is an article on Forbes, why I should pay attention to influencer marketing. So that's good so far. It shows me what's heavily shared, but I'm really interested in the author of the content and whether they're an authority in the space. And what we do in BuzzSumo is pick up the author. So you can see here it's by somebody called Dory Clark, who I don't know. So what I can do here is then say, okay, let's see other content by Dory Clark. So I can simply click her name, or his name here. And then this will bring back the most shared content by this particular author. So I can start to get a sense of, is this an author that's relevant for, let's say I'm doing work on influencer marketing. I can see they write for entrepreneur.com. I can see they write for Harvard Business Review. And they do look relevant because there's 3 mistakes to avoid when networking for introverts, for example, how to win clients, how to reinvent yourself after 50. That might be useful for me, having turned 50. So I think, having looked at this person, they may be, quite a popular author in my space. I mean, they're getting shares of 9,000, for example, here, which is a significant number of shares. They're writing for large sites. So the first thing I want to do is identify authors of heavily shared content. I can do that using a BuzzSumo search and then looking at the authors of that content and where they're writing, because sometimes they may write an article, but it's a one-off, and actually most of their content's about something else completely. So it's good to look at the content that they're writing. So that's just the first way, find authors of heavily shared content. The other thing I can do is just see who's sharing that content. So let's say I'm also interested in writing something about networking for introverts, for example. One of the things I could do is look at who shared this particular article, because people who've shared this article may be more empathetic to sharing content that I'm writing. So I've now got a complete list of people who shared this article. So when I say complete, it's actually people who shared the article on Twitter is what that view share has picked up. So I can see the people who shared it on Twitter, and then I can see whether actually I want to reach out to any of these individuals to share my content, which was very similar to the content that they've shared. I can resort this list in a number of ways. I can sort by their Moz page authority for their site, by their number of followers, if I'm interested in reach, by the average number of retweets they get. The other thing I can do, and I'll come back to this a little bit later, is I can export this content. So I can export this list into a spreadsheet, and I'll show you how to do this later, because this is probably a key part of building your influencer list. So, but number 2, I can see who shared a specific piece of content, as that may be relevant for me in terms of getting those people in my sort of list. The third way you can find influencers is very straightforward. You go to the influencers top tab in BuzzSumo, and you type in a topic. So I'll type in a topic that I know well, e-learning, and this will bring me back a list of influencers in e-learning. By default, the influencer results are sorted by relevancy for you, which is based on our algorithm, but you can also resort, as with the other list, by page authority, numbers of followers, etc. So I can look at these people, I can add them to a Twitter list if I want to. I can also export the entire list, as I just mentioned, to pull into my own CRM. Obviously I can follow the individuals, etc. So I can do an influencer search. A couple of things about influencer searches which you may not use, so just to show you. When I go through this list, I can see that a number of the people who are coming up, this is a site called eLearning Learning. This is a site called the eLearning site, this eLearning industry site. I know, because I know this industry, that they're really broadcasters. These people aggregate content and they send it out again. So they may be great sites for getting my RSS feed included and distributed, but they're not people who really retweet my content. And I can ignore these people. If I click on Ignore Broadcasters here, anyone who's got a reply ratio of less than 4%, we say as a broadcaster, they're not likely to reply to a tweet. So I can refilter ignoring broadcasters, and that'll bring back my list again. But this time, as you can see, those individuals or companies are now missing. So I've ignored the broadcasters because I really want to find people who will engage with and reply to my content, retweet my content. So I'm not really interested in the broadcasters. As I say, I might be interested in their site to put an RSS feed on, but not as an influencer to outreach to. I can also refilter by type, so I can ignore companies or journalists, or I might just be after journalists if I'm trying to find a list of people to outreach to cover, I don't know, a new product launch or something that I'm doing. It might be useful for me to refilter in a different way, so ignore bloggers and really just go for journalists, for example. So that's another useful way of finding influencers that are relevant to you. Something that people don't use very often, but I think is quite powerful, is simply to search by company. So if I wanted to find influencers, let's say, who work at HubSpot, I can search for a particular company name here. And this only applies to people who've included it in their Twitter bio, so they say they work at that at HubSpot. You can see here, Anna, inbound marketing at HubSpot, for example. I work at HubSpot, always tweet the truth, it's good. A blogger at HubSpot, etc. Inbound sales and marketing guru at HubSpot. So I've got a list here, actually of 8 pages of people who have HubSpot in their Twitter bio that I can refilter, sort. I can export as a list if I'm trying to make contacts there. Obviously, I can also use this in conjunction with other tools such as LinkedIn company pages, see who works for a company. But here I've got their Twitter IDs. I can tweet out to them, ask them if they want to participate in a survey that I'm doing or whatever. I want to reach out to them in the initial stages. So searching for a company can be quite useful. If I jump back to top content, some other things that can be useful to do is to see who shares content. Another type of person you might want to reach out to are people who've previously shared your own content. So if I search for BuzzSumo, whoops, come back to big data. If I search for BuzzSumo.com here, I can see our most shared articles, and then I can see who's shared it. So our most shared article this show was an article by my colleague Henley, 40 Fears to Keep SEOs Awake at Night, and I can look at who shared this particular content. So I can view the sharers of this content. And that might be a useful list of people to reach out to. They're not influencers as such, but if I'm doing a new article or a new feature about BuzzSumo, these people have previously retweeted our content. They may be empathetic to helping us share new content. So it might be a useful list to export to have a list of people who've shared our content. And hopefully they may share new content for us. And again, I can retweet and do all the resort in lots of ways as I could with all the other ones there. So I think it can be quite useful to look at some of your most shared content and see who shared that. Of course, in exactly the same way, you could decide to see who's sharing your competitors' content. So you could actually put in a competitor's content URL here, and you can see who's sharing their content. And you can do this down to a specific URL. It doesn't have to be a domain name. You can also search for multiple domains as well. So you could do BuzzSumo.com or anothercompetitor.com or anothercompetitor.com. So you can see not only who's sharing your content, but who's sharing your competitors' content, which again might be an interesting list that you might at various times want to reach out to, particularly to see who's helping to amplify your competitors' content. You'll be probably seeing a feature here that's not on your BuzzSumo yet, but will be hopefully by the end of this week, and that's backlinks. We've introduced a new feature in BuzzSumo, which may be helpful also to your outreach, which is, if you're looking to identify link opportunities, is where you can see all of the sites that link to a particular domain. So, and you can, it takes about a minute to run, but you can look at links to a specific domain or links to just a specific page. You can look at all results or one result per domain. So this has now shown me one result per domain. I've previously run another one which I'll show you. So this is showing me that actually there were 1,645 links to BuzzSumo in this period, but there were 876 different domains. And here I'm just listing the domains, so I can see that Social Media Examiner, this was their most shared article that linked to us, Buffer, Huffington Post, Moz.com, Inc.com, etc. So I can see the sites that are linking to us, and I can fully export all of this data. Just to show, I ran one a bit earlier. So this was one I ran earlier. I'll just go full screen for you, which just did all results. And so you can see that actually Social Media Examiner, Social Media Examiner, Social Media Examiner, Buffer, etc. They have multiple results. So I wanted to sort of remove those and just see one result per domain. So this functionality can reveal will be with you hopefully this week. We've just been beta testing it. It will be out in beta for all of you to run through. But that may help you identify people who are linking to one of your competitor sites and giving you particular outreach opportunities there in terms of link building. And you can filter that for links for the past month or the past week. So rather than looking back 5 years, let's look at the people who are linking in the very short term. Jumping back to influencer searches, one of the things I forgot to say here is if I want to search for influencers in a particular topic, The other thing I can do is filter by location or country. So I'm currently in sunny Australia, which I'm very lucky, and I go back to London this weekend, so no more sunshine for a little while. But I could refilter this list by city here, and we find cities tend to work better than countries. So I can find a list of e-learning influencers in a specific city or country. I say cities tend to work much better. So if I want to target people to reach out to, say in London because I'm doing an event. And interestingly, we talked to a company the other day, and they were saying they were using it a lot to find people to invite to specific events. So that was an interesting use that we hadn't really thought of in terms of why they were targeting influencers by a specific city location. So they're the main ways that you can try to find different types of influencers, and the type of search you use will clearly depend upon what your objective of, what type of outreach list you're putting together. But I'll just recap those before we move on. So if I go back to the slides and just check that I've covered 8 ways to find influencers. So just quickly recap. I will put these slides on SlideShare for you as well as a recording of the webinar. So yes, find authors of heavily shared content, see where they write, check that what they're writing is relevant for your list, search for influencers by a specific topic, search for people by company, so that's the HubSpot example, view sharers of specific content, and I say I find this quite powerful in a number of contexts really, but seeing people who've shared a specific piece of content. Search for sharers of your content, so these people may be empathetic, and by the same token you can search for sharers of your competitors' content as well. Filter by location, I covered that, and filter by type. So I've covered the main 8 ways that I wanted to run through the live demonstration. So this is just a way initially of trying to identify influencers. Then there's a lot of analysis we want to do about those influencers. Whoops, there were actually 9, so I could filter by type and actually the broadcaster. So that's a quick summary of how to find them, and as I say, I'll share the slides. One of the things I really wanted to emphasize was to export your lists. If you use the export button, you'll export a complete list of data from us, which has a lot more data than's shown on the screen. So we'll show you that if it's an export of shared content, we'll show you the date it's published, etc. But here we'll show you a lot of information about the name of the individual, their URL of their website, their Twitter ID, their retweet ratios, etc. And you can then pull this into your CRM or your own spreadsheets. So do use the export feature on BuzzSumo. It's a very powerful feature to get a lot more data for you and make life a lot quicker for you. Once you have your lists, obviously you want to get to know them, and there are a number of ways we can do this. The first thing we can do is simply follow them within BuzzSumo. We can click the follow button. We can also click the little icon and add them to a Twitter list. We might want to create a Twitter list and then add particular types of people to that list. But one of the things I think is quite valuable is to look at understanding what they share, and I'll show you why I think this is particularly relevant. We will show you what links they shared, and we'll do an analysis and breakdown of that. So let me just give you an example. So if I go back here, and I've just realized I need to answer questions, so I'll do that in a second. So if I come back to my little e-learning example, top on this list is Tom Kuhlman, who I know. Tom works for Articulate and is an incredibly popular guy, and he shares lots of tips and trips and tricks around using Articulate and e-learning authoring tool. But if I analyze the links that Tom shares, and he's listed as the top influencer, lots of people like and respect him. But look, if we see what he's sharing 57% from community at Articulate. He's sharing another 20% straight from the Articulate website. So 3/4 of what Tom's sharing is actually just broadcasting Articulate content, which is fair enough. That's what he does. But he may be less likely to share my content if he's primarily just broadcasting his own. By contrast, if I look at someone like Janet Cleary here, who's the Managing Director for the eLearning Guild in the US, and look at the links that Janet's sharing, I can see the list of links, but I can also analyze them by domain. let's take a little while. And what I can see for Janet is actually 10% of what she shares are e-learning guild links. That's fair enough. But 90% is then other links. So a few larger sites like LinkedIn, 6%, but a wide range of other links. So actually somebody like Janet may be much more likely to share my content as part of a wide range of content than somebody like Tom, who's broadcasting more. So really useful, I think, to look at and understand what people are sharing, what type of content and links they're sharing, and whether they're therefore likely to share your particular content. The other thing you can do if you're following a particular author and want to get to know them is to use an author alert. So within BuzzSumo you can go to content alerts, you can set up a specific author alert, and if you set it up for real time, we'll alert you every time they publish a new piece of content, so you can often be the first to know. Obviously you could also do that by trying to follow their Twitter accounts and see that, but here we'll send you an email specifically every time they publish a new piece of content, so you can be one of the first to reshare that content and get noticed by the individual. The other thing you can do is use BuzzSumo with BuzzStream. So some of you may or may not know BuzzStream, but it's a very useful tool if you're doing outreach work, and it's integrated with BuzzSumo. So I'll just show you the way you could use that. If I just do a search here in BuzzSumo for influencers, as I've done for e-learning, what I can do is right-click on my screen, use the Chrome extension from BuzzStream, their buzz marker, and I can immediately hit Create a Prospecting List. And then what BuzzStream will do is it will crawl my page. It will pull up all the contact details that it finds, so the prospect list initially of the sites, and then it will allow me to start prospecting. And just to show you what this does, just for speed really, I'll just show you this on the slides. So you click Create Prospecting List, it brings up the websites as you just saw, and then as you click through each website, BuzzStream will pull through all the contact data that it has for you, or data that's already in your BuzzStream CRM, so it can pull it through. So you can see how you could do a search in BuzzSumo, use that to create a prospecting list, and then pull in all the contact details from BuzzStream that they have, and then they will appear inside your BuzzStream CRM. So you can use BuzzSumo with a number of tools. This is one that's worked quite nicely with BuzzSumo to then pull in contact data directly from BuzzStream. You can also add people directly from BuzzSumo into BuzzStream. So just a little tip, something you could do if you also use BuzzStream. The other thing is, once you then have all of these lists, how do you build the relationships with these individuals? And just some thoughts on what we do at BuzzSumo in terms of practice. So obviously initially we would follow them, we'd tweet and share their content, generally just being friendly and try to help promote the content of the influencers that we're reaching out to. We do mention them when we share content, so they know that we've mentioned them and they get a notification to that effect. I do find it frustrating sometimes when you share content from a website. It's not easy to necessarily always find someone's Twitter address, but it's worth digging out the Twitter address and mentioning it when you share the content. If they have a blog that allows comments, I mean, increasingly following Buffer's decision, there are a number of people who, Copyblogger's decision, there are a number of people who don't allow comments, but where they have comment on their blogs, take part in the discussions. I think one of the most powerful ones is to seek an introduction through a connection. That often works much better than anything else if you can get an introduction through a connection. And that's where obviously classically LinkedIn does work very well. You can see who of your connections have a connection and ask for an introduction. You can do simple things to start with. You can ask if you could interview them for your website. In my experience, a lot of people are prepared to give their time to interview them for the website. Or you may just tweet out and ask them for their top tips, and often you can get a tweet back with some of their top tips. You can put a number of those together in terms of a blog post about top tips from various experts. You could ask them to write a guest post for your own site. Obviously, ideally, over time, you'd start to collaborate on content, so you do something jointly. I think this is a really good point that Matthew Barbie, who I really like, he's great on influencer marketing. I mean, he's saying the first thing you should always do if you're approaching influencers, is consider their incentive. What's in it for them? So you do need to think about what's in it for them, not just what's in it for you. And just some thoughts on what you can offer influencers. You can obviously link to their site, which is great if you've got a high authority or highly ranked site. You can recommend their services on your site. You can offer them, if you're a product or a services company, you can offer them free or discounted use of your services, and that's something that could work well. Obviously offer to share their other content. In fact, don't offer to do it, just do it and get it out there. So try to think about what you can offer, what's in it for the people that you're contacting. And the final fallback is you can obviously pay high authority influencers as well. So there are a number of high authority bloggers who you can pay to write content, to share content. And if you do that, I'd suggest you have some sort of payment by results mechanisms, which might be, pay by the number of shares achieved, which will help them, incentivize them to make sure they get it through and across their networks. So final resort, you can always pay to try and get some content lifted. Another thing is just to find target sites for placing content. It's not always about individuals. You can outreach to specific sites. You can do this using, obviously, searches in BuzzSumo for heavily shared sites, or even Google searches. A nice feature of BuzzSumo is you can find the most shared domains with a content analysis report. So just to quickly show you one I prepared earlier. I did a search here for using a content analysis report in BuzzSumo for B2B marketing, and it gives me all the standard information about how many articles it found, what the average shares were, what types of content are getting most shares, and what networks they're getting most shares, days of the week, content length, etc. But one of the things in the content analysis report is it shows me the most shared domains for B2B marketing. And so if I were writing articles around B2B marketing, as an example, then actually the top ranked blog run by Lee Odden is a good one. Business to Community, B2B Marketing Insider, etc. Marketing Profs. LinkedIn is really growing as well. LinkedIn is a platform with the Pulse platform, and you don't necessarily always need consent to that. You can now publish via Pulse a long-form blog post on LinkedIn, which I think is really growing and quite interesting. But you can see the most shared domains for any particular topic, and they may be useful ones for you to reach out to. So conscious of time, so I've run through my my 25 minutes, in fact a little bit more, so coming to the end of the half an hour. You can also use Google Search, type in a topic plus guest post, and you can find sites that take guest posts which are useful to you. I mentioned the backlink functionality which is coming to BuzzSumo this week, so you'll be able to see who's linking to competitor content. And the other thing you can do is build Twitter ad lists. I mean, Twitter now allows you to promote ads to audiences based either on email addresses or Twitter IDs. Email addresses from your CRM may not be the same ones they've signed up to Twitter with, so often not as good. But obviously through BuzzSumo you can just create and export a list of Twitter IDs. You can maybe target the people who share your content, so you can produce a list of people who share your content, promote ads to them, or you can promote ads to target influencers in a topic area. So just export the list from BuzzSumo, filter and refine. So hopefully I've covered in that sort of 25 minutes or so a little about how BuzzSumo can help you with your outreach work. I just check now on questions and those sorts of things. I don't think we do have. You're all very quiet. There are no questions for me. I hope that's self-explanatory. What I want to say is, if you have any questions, do just mail me. I'm just steve@buzzsumo.com, or you can mail team@buzzsumo.com, or you can get me on Twitter as well. So just any questions, just do shout and we'll try our best to help. If you've got any ideas on features we don't have that you'd like to see, let us know. We're always adding new features. So the backlinks one is one that's coming. The other one that's coming in a week or two is a language filter, so you can search for most shared content by language, which is helpful for those, particularly in non-English speaking world. So we're always keen to add new features. So thank you again very much for attending. Any questions, just let me know, and I will post up the slides to SlideShare along with a copy of the webinar today. So yeah, enjoy your day wherever you are, and thank you very much for attending. Thank you.